and we're here for the final finished video of this awesome landscape project in Meredith on Lake Winnipesaukee. Hunter Secord, project manager with Stevens Landscaping Professionals, is here to fill us in on what has happened since we were last here. So pretty much a lot's happened. It's all done. What has been, we're standing in what you said is your favorite part. Why is this your favorite area?
Yeah, so this is kind of the side access to the house. So as much as there's a lot going on, we tried to design it in a way where it wasn't going to draw too much attention. For guests coming in, we really wanted them to focus on the main driveway. This area is like a grocery drop-off area. So there's a cobblestone tire tracks leading down to this walkway here. And then beside the walkway is a raised garden area for vegetables, and right inside the door is their kitchen area. So everything's kind of connected. This is really all access and kind of easy use for cooking and dropping off groceries and using the vegetables and stuff like that. So this is cool. It's off to the side a little bit, and it doesn't draw the eye too much, but it serves a great purpose.
And for the prep on the garden beds here for the vegetables, is there anything different you have to do than your floral vegetation?
A little bit, yeah.
Stuff?
Before we put the granite curbing in, we did some preliminary irrigation sleeving. That's actually on its own zone so that they can control that depending on what they have in there, the irrigation system.
And on this property, what was the biggest challenge that you faced for what was here?
Drainage was a big one. So they had to do a lot of blasting and hammering for the property, and doing that creates a lot of different water movement and flow. And on top of that, we usually tend to study some of the roof lines and where the house is going to dump a lot of that storm water so that we can take care of that drainage before we really get into making the landscape pretty. So the beginning parts of this project was a lot of sleeving and piping for catching water runoff and getting it all underground and down to dry wells so that the water can infiltrate, getting it out of the way of the rest of the landscape.
Awesome. Super important, especially when we're protecting the water as well. So what else has happened? There's some landscape lighting, there's some patio stuff here. Yeah,
so since we were last here, patios were kind of in the works when we were here last. The cobblestone tire tracks were not in yet, and those are now in, and they're used very often. Most of the time that we're here, the customer is actually back down here, and it works perfectly for the car that they use. We actually had their car here during the planning process to have them like test drive in so we could paint out what was comfortable for them to pull in here. So that's been completed. All the walkways have been completed. All the stepping stones, the grass, the irrigation, the lighting. So it all came together really nicely, and the water does what it's supposed to do and kind of stays out of the way of the rest of the landscape, so it's functioning well.
Awesome. Were there any other special requests the client had when you were finalizing the project, from choosing what plants to use or things like that, or they give you the freedom?
Somewhat of the freedom. We were able to kind of guide them in a direction of what we thought was going to work best here. Obviously, in the lakes region, in most of the areas, you have to consider deer. So we designed a plant palette that was going to be somewhat flexible and not attracting deer as much as we can. And other than that, they just describe the colors that they like to see and some of the textures and sizes and where they wanted screening and where they wanted it to be more open. And this is a very vegetated lot to begin with, so usually when new houses are installed on the lake, they need to have some revegetation plan to put back points from what was removed for taking the house down and putting a new one in. But they kept a lot of trees here. So there was no required vegetation per se, but we did install plantings, like I mentioned, that we're going to give them screening and define certain pathways and stuff like that. So those are all in, and it looks very nice.
So for people to start thinking about their projects, when should they be reaching out? Because when did you start these conversations with this client?
So we started actually many years ago when they still had their cottage here, which was nice because we were able to go in the cottage that they had, talk about how they want to use the new property, work with them throughout the design process for the house to tie in the landscaping and do some permitting all together. So it doesn't have to take as long, but it is nice to get in the early stages so you can work as one big group to design the house, the landscaping, and everything else around it. We started the retaining walls last year in the fall, got those in, and then we were back here early in the spring to do the patio work. And it was a long process, so we were here for the majority of the summer. and we put the plants in towards the tail end of the summer. So it'll be good to see, now the plants are kind of starting to be at their tail end of the season as well. So to come back in the spring and see the plants start to take shape will be exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it looks beautiful. Thanks for sharing it with us and the audience is watching. And we look forward to the next project.
Thank you.
Thanks.